Tony Spilotro, the fearless enforcer who ruled Las Vegas. Introduction: the man who brought fear to Las Vegas. Las Vegas in the 1970s and 80s was a city built on illusions, neon lights, high-rolling gamblers, and the promise that fortune could be made with a single roll of the dice. But beneath the glitz and glamour was a world far darker. Hidden behind casino walls and desert highways lay the fingerprints of organized crime. And in the middle of this underworld stood a man whose name struck fear into both mobsters and civilians alike: Tony Spilotro. Nicknamed the Ant, Spilotro was not a casino operator, nor a businessman, nor a politician. He was the mob's enforcer, the man sent to keep the river of stolen money skimmed directly from Las Vegas casinos, flowing smoothly back to Chicago. But Tony's methods went far beyond intimidation. His story is one of loyalty, violence, betrayal, and a brutal end that symbolized the Mafia's declining grip on Las Vegas. This is the story of Tony Spilotro, the real-life inspiration behind the character of Nicky Santoro in Martin Scorsese's Casino, and why the Mafia, after years of using him as their man in Nevada, ultimately decided he had to be taken out. Anthony John Spilotro was born in Chicago in 1938, the fourth of 6 sons in a hardworking Italian-American family. His father ran a small restaurant and wanted his children to lead respectable lives. But young Tony was drawn to the streets, not the kitchen. Chicago's West Side was a breeding ground for future mobsters. Petty theft, hustles, and fights filled the lives of restless kids. While his brothers pursued ordinary jobs, Tony gravitated toward crime, gaining a reputation for being fearless and vicious. He was short in stature, earning him the nickname the Ant. But what he lacked in size, he made up for in brutality. By his late teens, Spilotro had already been arrested for burglary and assault. Yet his boldness caught the attention of older mob figures. Among them was Sam "Momo" Giancana, the Chicago outfit boss who ruled the underworld during the 1950s and 60s. Giancana and his men saw something in Tony. Not brains, not charm, but raw, unfiltered violence. That made him useful. Through Giancana's network, Tony met Joseph "Joey the Clown" Lombardo and other outfit leaders, cementing his place as a trusted soldier. He was a street enforcer in Chicago, but his career and fate would soon shift westward to the deserts of Nevada. To understand Tony's role, you need to understand Las Vegas in the 1970s. On the surface, casinos were legitimate businesses attracting millions in tourism. But behind the curtain, the Chicago outfit and other crime families used Vegas as a money machine. The scam was simple but effective. Mob-connected casinos reported profits to the government, but a percentage of cash, often millions annually, was secretly removed from the count. This skim was then funneled back to bosses in Chicago, Kansas City, Milwaukee, and Cleveland. It was untaxed, untraceable, and immensely profitable. The man overseeing Chicago's share was Frank "Lefty" Rosenthal, a skilled bookmaker and casino manager. Lefty was the brains, but brains alone weren't enough. The outfit needed muscle, someone to protect their operations, enforce discipline, and make problems disappear. That man was Tony Spilotro. In 1971, the outfit sent him to Las Vegas. His official role? None. He wasn't a pit boss or casino manager. He simply looked after things, a euphemism for intimidation, violence, and murder when necessary. The mob's silent partner had just arrived. Tony Spilotro quickly made a name for himself in Las Vegas. But unlike the older bosses who operated discreetly, Tony was reckless. Instead of sticking to the mob's plan of quiet skimming, he formed his own burglary crew known as the Hole-in-the-Wall Gang. The gang earned its name from their preferred method: breaking into jewelry stores, homes, and businesses by literally drilling or blasting holes in walls. Their robberies were bold, fast, and lucrative. For Tony, it was about more than money. It was about power and reputation. But this freelancing worried his bosses back in Chicago. The outfit wanted stability and secrecy in Vegas. Spilotro's violent escapades and flashy crimes risked drawing police attention. Still, Tony continued, believing fear kept both rivals and civilians in line. Soon, everyone in Las Vegas knew his reputation. Casino employees whispered about him. Dealers avoided eye contact, and anyone who crossed him often disappeared. Yet the more powerful Tony seemed, the more enemies he quietly made, not just with law enforcement, but within the mob itself. Spilotro's closest ally in Las Vegas was Frank "Lefty" Rosenthal. On paper, they were a perfect duo. Lefty ran the casinos with skill. Tony provided protection. But their friendship soured over one woman. Gary Rosenthal, Lefty's glamorous wife. Tony began an affair with Gary, an act of betrayal that shattered trust between the two men. Lefty tolerated it publicly, fearing Spilotro's wrath, but behind the scenes, resentment grew. For the outfit, this was more than a personal issue. It was a liability. An enforcer who couldn't control himself jeopardized the very system they had built. Tony's temper also escalated. Stories spread of his brutal punishments, burning enemies alive, crushing skulls and vices, and torturing anyone suspected of disloyalty. These tales weren't just whispered in Vegas. They reached Chicago. The bosses began asking, was Spilotro protecting their empire or destroying it? By the late 1970s, Las Vegas law enforcement and the FBI had Spilotro firmly in their sights. Surveillance operations tracked his movements, while undercover agents infiltrated his gang. The turning point came with the arrest of hole-in-the-wall gang members after a failed burglary in 1981. With members flipping under pressure, the FBI gained valuable testimony linking Spilotro to burglaries, extortion, and murders. Though Tony beat several charges in court, the spotlight was now fixed on him. At the same time, the Nevada Gaming Commission banned him from entering casinos. This ban crippled his influence over the very empire he was supposed to protect. For the outfit bosses, Spilotro was becoming more trouble than he was worth. The skimming operation, once smooth and silent, was now plagued by headlines and investigations. For mobsters, survival depended on one rule: don't bring heat to the family. By the early 1980s, Tony Spilotro had broken that rule too many times. His reckless burglaries, public violence, and affair with Gary Rosenthal had angered both Chicago bosses and Las Vegas allies. The outfit decided he had to go, but killing Spilotro was not a simple matter. He had loyal followers and carried a fearsome reputation. Still, the bosses concluded that eliminating him was the only way to restore order and protect their cash flow. On June 14, 1986, Tony and his brother Michael were told to attend a meeting in Chicago, supposedly to discuss new business. Instead, they were led into a basement. There, in a brutal scene, the brothers were beaten to death by fellow mobsters. Their bodies were buried in a cornfield in Indiana, discovered days later by authorities. It was a violent end for a man who had lived by violence, and it marked the beginning of the end for the outfit's power in Las Vegas. The murders of Tony and Michael Spilotro sent shockwaves through organized crime. In Las Vegas, the outfit's grip weakened as law enforcement tightened control over casinos. Corporate ownership replaced mob influence, and the golden age of Mafia Vegas came to an end. Frank Rosenthal survived an assassination attempt, but faded from the public eye, later moving to Florida. Other outfit leaders faced indictments and prison sentences as federal prosecutions dismantled their networks. For many, the deaths of the Spilotro brothers symbolized a turning point: the mob's willingness to sacrifice its own, and the inevitable collapse of an empire built on secrecy, intimidation, and blood. Tony Spilotro was sent to Las Vegas to protect the Mafia's golden goose. Instead, his hunger for power, his brutality, and his inability to control his impulses made him a liability. His story reflects a broader truth about organized crime. Those who rise through fear often fall by the same hand. Las Vegas, once ruled by mobsters, transformed into a corporate paradise. But the shadows of men like Spilotro still linger in its history. His life inspired films, books, and endless debate about loyalty, greed, and betrayal. In the end, Tony Spilotro's fate was sealed not by law enforcement, but by the very family he served. And his death marked the closing chapter of the Mafia's reign in America's most infamous city of sin. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the brutal world of Tony Spilotro and the mob's control of Las Vegas, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories from the underworld's hidden past.